Good Mommin' Monday.
You're here with the Mistaken Mama podcast. I'm Kaylee.
And I'm Mandee.
And we are your hosts. This week, we're going to be talking about siblings. Not really our own, but we might throw that in a little bit, but more so giving our kids siblings.
Yes.
And kind of just what that's looked like, how we feel about it, and let's dive right in.
There we go.
But first, our wins, our fails, and our books.
Yes.
Do you win?
And we have Kaylee's book. This is a win right here.
This is honestly, this is my win right there. In real world, this came out yesterday.
Yes.
But in your guys' world, it's been a couple weeks now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can still order it.
Yes, you can still order. We'll have the link in the bio if that's something you're interested in. But this is my win, is that this finally released. And I'm really happy about it.
I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
Yay.
I'm so excited too.
What is my win? I don't even know. I think my win might be what we're talking about in the car. It's kind of a win-fail.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
My daughter is teething, and she's also going through that time where they realize that mom is separate from them. Mm-hmm. And they realize mom can walk away from me now, and oh my gosh, she's across the room. And man, oh man, I don't remember it hitting Maverick this hard, or I was just okay with just chilling with him all day. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with chilling with her all day. That's the win side of it, is I enjoy snuggling up with her, but I can't hardly get anything done. Mm-hmm. Unless I want to hear her scream or carry her on my back all day. Mm-hmm. I just can't.
Which even they get tired of after a while.
Yeah.
And then it can hurt your back.
My back's hurt. And I haven't even been doing it that much. But yeah, so it's like we were talking about in the car, it's a bittersweet moment. It's, you love the snuggles, but at the same time, you just want time to do you and not have a child attached to you at all times. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, I feel that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And as far as book goes, I'm still reading the Crescent City book.
Oh man.
Like I said, it is a good book. I swear people aren't going to believe me that it's a good book. It's a good book. It's just a lot of information, and I haven't found time to read it during the day. So all I'm reading is at night, and after like a page or two, I'm passing out. So I'm not getting very far every night. I need to find some time to read during the day. We've been busy lately, so I just haven't.
Makes sense. I finally finished The Takeover.
Yay!
I know. I was up Monday night.
Okay.
Finishing packing up the book orders.
Oh, yes.
And I took that time to just listen to the audiobook. I was like, I'm going to be here a while. Mm-hmm. I had like 45 orders that I needed to pack still. And I definitely finished the book in that time.
Nice.
And so I did. I really liked it. The third book in the series, I don't think I'm going to read. I started it and I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah.
But I really, really liked the first two. Mm-hmm. I might just leave it at that so that I don't ruin my series for me because I really liked it.
That's kind of how I felt about the last book of the book that shall not be spoken of because I can't ever say it.
The Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah. The last book is in one of the sisters' perspectives, and you hear about her throughout the book, but it's not a major role, and so it was hard to get into. But then once I did, it was a really good read. But so I get what you mean, because it also felt like a separate story from the other characters. So
yeah, I don't know how I feel about those kinds of books.
Yeah,
I feel like it's an interesting perspective, but it feels weird when it's coming from a character that you've barely heard from.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to see if I can get into the third book of that series, but I also kind of want to branch off. I still haven't finished The Finish Line. I started it, but I'm like, I kind of like where the story ended. I've gotten a few chapters further into it, and I like where it's going. It feels different. Yeah. Though, because like the main premise of the story seems like it's over, and so I want to read it because I want to know what happens. Right. But it also doesn't feel like the same story. It feels like a separate story that I can read later and be fine with it. Yeah. It's kind of what I'm thinking, and I kind of want to branch off to something else, and I'll come back to this later.
Fair.
But I don't know what I want. I'm thinking maybe Court of Thorns and Roses because I haven't read it yet.
I think you would really enjoy it.
Okay, so we've gotten through our wins, our fails, and the books and all that. So,
Siblings.
So you are the most recent to dive into this. Yeah. So I'm interested to hear your perspective.
Yeah.
Because you just recently, within 5 months, how old is she?
Yep, 5 months.
5 months. You had 5 months of having the whole sibling thing.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going for you?
It's really good. It's different, obviously. I have another kid to account for. Maverick thankfully took to her really, really well. We were always talking about, he calls her Mimi, because that's how he used to say baby. So he calls her Mimi. Sometimes he calls her sister or sissy, but he mainly calls her Mimi. And he loved her in my tummy. He would always come up, hug her, and kiss on my belly. And we talked about when Mimi was going to be here and everything. And when she came, he's obsessed with her.
Oh, he really is.
Especially in the beginning. Like, he was just like, this is my Mimi. And, like, nobody can touch her. And, like, I just love her. I want to hug her, squeeze her a little too tight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed she's just getting to the age where she can grab things and, like, hit at things. And so she'll accidentally, like, do that and, like, get him in the face while he's trying to snuggle her, or accidentally, like, grab one of his toys. And so I think he's starting to see that she's more than just this little baby that is, oh, so cute, and I can just come snuggle her whenever I want. Now he's like, oh, wait, you can do things now? And I think you've seen it a little bit with Ellie coming over, how he, like, well, sometimes she's standing up and knocks her over, like, you're not supposed to be doing that. You're a baby. What are you doing? Because Quincy's starting to sit, and he'll just come over and I'm just like,
that's not safe.
Yeah. He's like, you're supposed to lay down and be wrapped up in a blanket and be a baby. What are you doing? So that's the first, like, sibling rivalry stuff that I've seen. But I'm excited to see how their relationship grows.
Oh,
very
Me
excited.
too.
Yeah,
I'm really excited for that.
So what about for you? How is it having 3?
So yeah.
So about that.
The first transition from 1 to 2 was so easy. Anna was 2.5 when I had Damon. She was really interested to know where babies came from, not like the process of having a baby, but like how they grow. Like, she loved every single week. I forget what it would have been, I think Saturdays. Every Saturday she liked going on the pregnancy app and seeing what baby looked like. Oh, yeah. And she would ask. I don't know how she knew what day of the week it was at 2.5, but she somehow. Yeah. I mean, she's always been really good at that, though. Yeah. Even now she's like, oh, it's Wednesday. You're going. I'm like, how do you know it's Wednesday? I mean,
Maverick kind of does that with his doodats, his garbage trucks. Every Thursday.
Doodats. But kids are surprisingly really good at managing.
They are.
Or not managing, but understanding time in a way that I don't understand.
It's weird.
I forget what day of the week it is, and she's like, it's Wednesday.
You're like, oh, yeah, right.
Yep. But so every Saturday she'd be like, oh, baby? And she would want to see how big baby was getting. And so she was really involved. She wanted to know what it was going to be like with him born. So she would watch, like, home birth videos with me. And I love how interested in it she is. And so when I had him, she took to him so well. Yeah. She was like, I want to be helping. She was like wanting to change diapers at 2.5. That's not the easiest thing in the world. But, you know, she wanted to be involved, which I was so happy with. And she did such a good job, other than breaking her leg. And then she wasn't so helpful during that time, but she couldn't be.
She tried.
She tried. But she did great. And then and then came time to have Ellie. Damon wanted nothing to do with her. Yeah. He was not happy. He saw that I had another baby in my arms when he woke up, and he was just like,
absolutely not.
He was so mad.
Yeah.
Every time she nursed, he would come over and like want to nurse, and he would just get all angry at her. And because he wasn't even 2 yet. Right. When she was born. He was about a month out from being 2, almost exactly. And he was just not a happy camper.
No. And I was
time.
worried that Maverick was going to be like that.
Yeah, I was really worried. I was like, well, shit. And I was scared to tell you about it because I was like, oh man, I'm going to scare her, because you had a few months left of your pregnancy. And I'm so thankful that that did not happen to you, because it was hard. And it just goes to show how different kids are.
It does. Because I really thought that Maverick would be like, that's my mom. Because he was kind of like that with everybody else. If somebody else was like coming over to give me a hug, he was like, that's my mama, or Michael or whatever. So I was like, how are you going to handle me holding a baby for hours a day?
I wonder when/if you guys have a third, if Quincy is going to behave similarly to Maverick or more similarly to Damon.
Yeah, I don't know.
That'll be an interesting thing to think about too, because if she behaves more similarly to Damon, it's gonna be like, is that a second kid thing? Because consistency has at least served us well in terms of Maverick and Anna being similar as the first children. Right. So once you get that third, we're gonna have to come back and be like, let's readdress this and see how things are different that time around. Yeah.
I will say that I don't have a third, so I can't speak for that. But I will say it was harder having my first than it was having my second.
What do you mean exactly?
Like going from no kids to one kid. Oh, and then having two kids, while there's hard moments and there's harder parts for sure, like, okay, now I don't have just one kid I have to grab. I have two that I have to wrangle. It's easier because I already went through it once.
Yeah. For me, I would say, yeah, same. And then it got harder again with the third, just a little bit. And only in certain aspects. Like leaving the house is harder because I only have two hands. Right. And so like if I'm holding Ellie, I only have one additional hand to hold one of the two other kids. Thankfully now, Anna and Damon love holding hands with each other. Oh, that's good. So like me or Thomas will hold Ellie, and then one of us will hold one of the kids' hands, and then they will hold hands in the middle of us. Oh, okay, and so we just like walk down the street with all four of us just like boop, brrr, like that. It's adorable. Yeah. And so I don't know how it would be with like another kid. It'd be an interesting thing because now I've seen both. And so it'd be interesting, like if I decide to have a fourth one, we'll see I almost called her Quincy. What's Ellie gonna do?
Yeah, I wonder what Quincy's like. Quincy seems, at least right now, she seems like a much more slightly demanding baby. Maverick never like scream cried ever. He was a very quiet baby. Every time we went anywhere, everybody was like, he never cries. And I'm like, yeah, he's just not a cry type baby. Quincy, she doesn't cry if I'm paying 100% attention to her.
Ellie's like that too.
She cries if she's left alone for 30 seconds.
She gets offended.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, that's how I feel. Yeah. I feel like she's like, how dare you put me down? Like, I am the princess of this house. You better pick me up. And I'm like, lady, I'm just trying to wash a dish. And I'll even have her in the living room as close to the baby gate. And then the sink's right on the other side of the baby gate. And I'm just washing dishes. And I'm looking at her like, hi, washing the dishes. And she's just like, ah. I'm like, I'm right here. I didn't leave you.
That's so funny. So on the topic of siblings, this is something that me and my husband have talked about a couple of times. So I think this is the same in both of our families. Okay. Our kids are the only ones in our families, at least as far as like the four of us, you and Michael, and then me and Thomas go, of being 100% siblings. Yes. Right? Yes. Yeah. Because you are the only product. He's the only product. I'm the only product. Thomas is the only product. Yep. Right? How do you think that that's going to change, if you think it's going to change at all, your kids' relationship with each other and with the outside world comparative to how you and your siblings were? Because I know that, like, when I was growing up, like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? Like, oh, I went to my sister's dad's house, and that always got weird looks because apparently nobody understood half siblings. Right. And so those were conversations that I always had to have that nobody else seemed to be having, and people were really confused. And I know that my kids aren't going to have that.
Right. I never experienced that because my mom had kids with my current stepdad. She stayed with him. So there was never, and I never went to my biological dad's house except for one time, and the boys were too little to even know. So I never had that aspect of it. But I think it will be interesting just to see what it's like to have my kids grow up with the same dad consistently, because I didn't have that until I was 6 or 7, and then I had the same dad consistently. So I missed out on what it was like to have a dad from 0 to 6. And this is a really fun time. And so I'm enjoying watching my kids have this experience with their dad.
Yeah, I feel the same way because I grew up without a dad too. I had a stepdad starting around age 9, but he was a piece of shit.
Right.
And then they broke up, or I guess divorce is the better term there, when I was 16. And so he was the only dad figure like I really ever had. Toxic dad figures just
coming in clutch.
Literally. But so I'm excited to see how that looks different too. I already see it sometimes that like I'm like, oh, when I was a kid, I never had this opportunity.
Right. And
so I really like it. Like with my oldest and my husband, they recently picked up doing RC cars. I've told you a little bit about this.
Yeah.
But for those of you that are watching the video, here is a picture of my daughter's with her RC cars and her dad's RC car. She's really happy, and they've recently gone out and done that. And because I know that like with having a girl and stuff, that can be kind of hard to like bond with a dad.
Right.
And so I love to see that dynamic growing, and it kind of heals my inner child a little bit because I didn't get to have that.
Right.
Because my dad was a piece of shit.
Right.
But so I'm really excited to see how their relationship grows and how it continues to heal my inner child. Because I love that for them.
Right.
And even me and Thomas have talked about like the possibility, like what if we got divorced? Like, because we're the kind of people that we like to talk about those things when now we're in a rational mind.
Right.
So that we know that these decisions have already been made given a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Some people judge us and they're like, you shouldn't be having that conversation because then it makes it inevitable. It's like, well, no, it makes us prepared.
Yeah.
You know, and we both agreed that, you know, as long as things don't end in a horrible, blazing chaos, you know, that we want to have all of those relationships continue and to try to co-parent as best as possible to avoid what both him and I had, because neither of us had a father figure growing up.
Right. Exactly. I've had similar conversations with Michael, and I've told him like I will never take your kids away from you. I will never be that person. We aren't getting a divorce, by the way.
Yeah, no, neither are we.
But
we're actually healthier than we ever have been.
Yeah, exactly. I think these conversations kind of help you to be healthier because you're like, you see what that person really is like given that situation, you know? But yeah, I told him I would never be that woman who is like, you cannot see your kids. It would have to be pretty bad stuff on his part for that to ever be a thing that I would not let him see his kids.
Yeah, so I agree.
So I think all 4 of us as well. I don't know for sure about Thomas. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
We all have quite a big distance between ages with our siblings.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Okay.
I knew I was going to remember it eventually, and you got to me first. Okay, anyways, yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes. Well, Thomas, yes and no. I'll explain that in a minute.
Okay. Do you love that? Like, do you love that our kids are just so close in age? I love that my kids, just my kids, are super close in age. But I also love that your kids are super close in age with my kids. Because I feel like they will always have somebody in their age range that they can relate to.
Yes. And
be close to because of not just friends, but family. You know?
Yes, I feel the same way. The only one that I have a little bit of like a concern about is Anna. Just because the next closest person in the family that is around her age, but then also a girl, is Ellie.
Right.
And there's a decent gap there.
Yeah, because Anna's 6 now?
5.
5, going on 6 this year.
Yep, she'll be 6 in November, and Ellie turns 1 in, oh my God, 2 months.
Oh God.
Okay. Let that sink in there for me.
Jeez.
So the only concern that I have is that the next closest person to Anna, in terms of age and also being a girl, is Ellie.
Yeah.
And there's like a 4-year age gap there.
Yeah. I think once they're older, it won't be so bad. Mm-hmm. But I think it'll happen kind of like you and I.
Yeah.
Where we are into the same things for so long, and then there's going to be that time where it's just, okay, now we're not into the same things for a little while.
Yeah, and then I think when Anna gets a little bit older, she'll be able to, I think Ellie and Quincy both, because they won't be old enough. Like, Ellie won't be so much older than Quincy to be able to be like, oh, well, I've already been through this.
Right, yeah.
Because they'll be going through stuff pretty much at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Whereas Anna will get to be the big sister to both of them and be able to be like, well, when I had my first period, let me, or
exactly.
when I first liked a boy. So I think that she's going to enjoy that aspect of it a little bit, because that's one thing that I liked about being a big sister.
Yeah.
I think that she's really going to enjoy the big sister aspect of it. I think it'll just take some getting used to, especially as a kid, where she's not going to have that, built-in best friend, like we say.
Yeah.
She's not going to have that other person that's the same, but I think she's still going to enjoy having all the other little kids around that are similar enough in age to her.
And I'm honestly, I know this is like way, way, way down the road, but I'm excited for when our kids are all in like their 20s and 30s. And I'm hoping that they just have like the best relationship and like good personality.
Yes, me
and
too.
I just imagine like big family gatherings and they all come together and maybe they have their own kids at that point, and it's just like one big family.
So since they're all going to get raised together, it'd be really interesting to see how those dynamics grow. And if they see each other more like siblings than they do as cousins. And I mean, technically they're not even just cousins, they're second cousins.
Yeah.
They are, and not even related.
Not by blood.
Are by marriage second cousins. So that's like pretty far down the line, and you don't typically see close relationships with those people, but they're going to have close relationships. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that dynamic grows and changes over time, and how they see each other and all of that. And kind of touching on the whole, us 4 don't have a sibling that's close. What's the age gap? I mean, I know it, but they don't. What is the age gap between you and your siblings and Michael and his siblings? The next closest one specifically.
I think it's about 8 years for both of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So for mine, it's 5.5 years. I think mine is Thomas's is technically the smallest gap, but mine's the smallest in terms of who you live with.
Okay.
Because when my mom had my sibling, it was she got pregnant when I was like almost 5, and then had my sibling when I was like 5.5.
Okay, yeah.
And I was old enough to remember a time before them, but so it was kind of like a weird adjustment for me, which is kind of interesting looking at my own oldest now, being like, if I were to have a child right now,
they'd be the same.
They'd be the same age gap between me and my sibling.
I didn't think about that.
And it's weird looking at Anna, because I'm like, not weird looking at her just in general, but like
looking weird, Anna. Just kidding.
But seeing how old she was and being like, that's how old I was when I got a sibling. I was an only child up until that point. And so that'd be weird, because, while I definitely remember a time when it was just me and Anna, that was so long ago now. And there wasn't a ton of it. Right. I very much enjoyed my time with it, but at the same time, I'm really glad that I had another one, because I feel like, and I mean, maybe this is the case and maybe it's not, I wonder if it's possible to reach a point where you're like, well, they've been an only child for so long. What's the point of having another one? I don't know if that's necessarily something that everybody gets. But I know that was something that I didn't want to feel. Right. Because I knew that I wanted more than one kid. Yeah. And I felt pretty secure in my decision to have another one when I did.
We did too. I really wanted them to be close in age, because Michael and I weren't close in age with our siblings. And our relationships with them, I think have gotten better now that we're older, but because there was such a big age gap, it's hard to connect to a sibling in that way. You're so far ahead. 8 years, that's
a lot.
That's a lot of time. And so you're just in such a different mindset.
Whole different life stages.
Yeah, you're not in like, they're a kid and you're on the verge of being an adult.
Yeah. And so like with you are married and you have 2 children, and your next oldest sibling, the closest sibling you have, he just graduated high school, right?
He's about to
graduate high school, yeah. So hasn't even graduated high school yet.
Yeah.
You two are in 2 very different life stages.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think back to the person I was where he's at right now. And to me, that feels so far away. And I don't know. It's weird.
It is weird, especially when like the world changes around you too, so that even how things work
Right.
is different.
Things are so different. So it's like I can give him advice from when I was that age, but things are so different that the advice that I give sometimes doesn't fall into what he's doing now. But so that was one of the reasons we really wanted our kids close in age. And we wanted them about 2 years apart, which happened, thankfully. And then if we have 2 more, we want to wait a few years before we have another if we do. But if we do, I would want another 2, just so they have kind of their buddy to go through life with and whatever. But yeah, I think it's great that you and I both kind of share the same core values with parenting as well, because it makes it easier to raise them all up together versus if we were trying to battle how we parented. I feel like that would be a lot harder.
I feel like it would too, because then I feel like when they're young, we're not going to have this problem as much. But when we got older, I feel like we would have a lot of issues with like, oh, well, I'm not allowed to do that. Or, oh, well, my mom lets me do this. Or,
right.
And while we might get some of that because you and I are bound to have our differences.
Right, yeah.
I don't think those differences are going to be fundamental.
Yeah.
On the premise of it's going to cause problems.
Right. Or it's going to cause like, well, my kid can't hang out with your kid because of that.
Exactly.
Kind of a thing.
And you and I have such a good relationship that I feel like even if we did have fundamental differences on like, I'm not going to change my mind and start parenting a different way. I feel like you and I can have conversations on like, okay, well, when they're together, what compromise can we reach to make this seamless? Because if they want to hang out, let's try to make that as easy as possible.
Let's try to make it work, kind of a thing. Yeah.
And you're probably one of the only people that I would do that with.
Yeah. Is there anything that makes you nervous about having kids that are close in age? I will say for me, when they get older, I never had the relationship of like, oh, make sure you don't tell mom like that I snuck out last night and met so-and-so, or, we're together at a party in high school, like can't tell mom kind of a thing. And that's one thing that makes me nervous is like, if I have, my goal is to have 4 kids down the road. May not happen, may happen, whatever. If I have 4 kids, I'm just imagining 4 kids being able to be like
conspiring against
their own little posse of like, and I hope to have a good enough a relationship with my kids that they would feel like they could always come to me about stuff like that. But you see it in the movies and I've never experienced it, so I don't know what it's really like, but I just wonder, I kind of worry about that kind of stuff.
I can see that. And I mean, me and my sibling actually did have that. They covered for me a couple times.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So when I was with, we'll call him D.
Okay.
I think you know who I'm talking about.
I think so.
I did sneak out.
Oh, okay.
And go and see.
I think I remember you telling me that, but I don't remember the covering part.
Yep. My sibling covered for me.
Okay.
I think caught me when I was leaving. And I was like, don't say anything. I'm sneaking out. It's like, okay.
Yeah. And
didn't ever say anything. I was actually the one who ended up blabbing on myself after I became an adult.
Yeah.
It was on accident. And I was like, oh. So my mom knows. And she was like, excuse me? Gave both of us a look. And we were both like, oops. I was like, I'm an adult. I can't get in trouble now.
Yeah. I think because I was so much older than my brothers, anytime some conflict, there was no like sneaking out or anything bad, but if there was ever a conflict, I always went to my mom and I'm like, look, this is what they're doing. Because I was older and I was like, they shouldn't be doing this. So I just went to my mom. So I feel like I was kind of the tattletale in the family, but it was more so like I was old enough that I knew that they shouldn't be doing that. So I would just go to my mom and be like, this is what they're doing.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm going to get that, or both of us really are going to get that too. I'm not sure. One thing in terms of like sneaking out, I hope that we both have a good enough relationship with our kids that they can communicate those things with us.
Right.
Granted, I know all kids are going to lie, all kids are going to be sneaky, but I hope that we're able to communicate the lack of safety in doing that.
Yeah.
And be able to be like, if this is something you're interested in doing, maybe let's find an arrangement of like a middle ground.
Yeah.
And hope to God
that doesn't happen.
Because I feel like with them being younger, they might have more success in the sneaking out part.
Right.
If you're listening to this, however many years down the road, children, we're on to you.
Don't sneak out. We know.
We've been there.
Well, and I always hear about it too. This is, again, from TV shows, whatever.
Which are always going to be dramatized.
Right.
Dramatized,
yeah. It's where the parents always say, well, I knew every time you snuck out. I just never did anything about it. And I always wonder, like, is that true or are you just saying it?
I feel like the parents would just say it because, I mean, maybe. I know that there are parents out there that genuinely just don't care.
Yeah.
Thomas's mom is one of them. She did not care.
I just can't imagine, like, laying in bed, hearing my kid, like, climb out a window or whatever, and just being like, yep, they're sneaking out again.
Yeah.
Not doing anything.
I feel like I'd be the type of parent, and I mean, someday if our kids come back and listen to this, they're going to be like, oh, she's been planning this for a long time. I'm the type of parent that I'll be like, all right, you're sneaking out? Let's go. I'm following you. See where they go.
True.
It's like, I'm going to come crash the party. All of a sudden, you're going to see me. I look young. I can probably pull it off. We'll see if I'll be able to pull this off again. And, oh, God, in 10 years, Anna will be 15. She'll be prime age for that shit.
Yeah.
10, 15 years, if I'm still looking this good, fine, cool.
Yeah.
Let's go. And then all of a sudden, she's going to look over, and there I am. Be like, oh, I thought we were both going.
Yeah.
You didn't invite me,
this was
rude.
a joint situation. So I guess I'm also glad, though, in the sense that if that were the case, hopefully they would have somebody that was like their protector in situations like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess that's a whole nother subject we could bring up on the podcast. But
yeah. In terms of siblings, though, there is that genuine fear of if they're all around the same age group, that also means that they're all going to be going to school together. And so if one of them knows about a party, odds are all of them does. Anna may be the only exception to that.
Right. But she could be the one that's like, hey, I know about this one.
Yeah. And she may also, I mean, I don't know what, how far the kids will go in terms of, helping each other out and stuff. Again, I really hope that our trust is strong enough. I was never somebody who was interested in parties.
Right, same.
And I kind of hope that none of my kids are either.
I
mean, they're homeschooled too, though. So that might be an added benefit to us as moms.
Yeah.
To be able to try to keep them out of that light and having genuine conversations with them about, like, okay, look, this is what these parties look like. Because Thomas went to parties. So he can give the perspective on what it was like at those parties. Whereas I can give the perspective of I didn't go because I didn't want to, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
I was never the weird kid that didn't go to parties. It was just not something that I didn't.
Yeah.
They knew not to invite me because I wasn't going to go. But it's not like they liked me any less.
Yeah, I think I got invited a couple times, but it was kind of a known thing that, like, we'll ask her, but she's probably not going to come.
Yeah, I think I only ever got asked once, and it wasn't by the person who was hosting it. It was by somebody who was going.
Right.
And because it was just a couple blocks down the road for me, and I was like, no.
Yeah,
I'm not, that's not my thing.
Yeah, that's how it was for me. I never went. I was just kind of like we're going tonight, kind of a, you could come, but we know you're not going to come, so we're just throwing it out there.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. I wonder, too, how that's going to go and, what the dynamic is. And honestly, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, watch. Our kids are going to conspire together.
That's what I'm worried about. That's the fear.
That's the fear.
Yeah.
It's going to be, Maverick and Damon who are conspiring together. It's going to be Ellie and Quincy. It's going to be Anna helping around.
Yeah.
And so you and I are probably going to be like, oh my God, this again.
And I mean, I think all parents hope and pray that they have, like we've said, a good enough relationship that their kid's not going to be out there doing these bad things. They're not going to be conspiring. They're not going to be lying and stuff. But I also think, that's the time in your life to make mistakes, to learn from them and stuff. And so I'm going to go into it anticipating these things.
Yeah.
So that I'm not blindsided, like, oh my God, my kid did what,
Same. And one thing too is that if they grow up, all of our kids together with that like best friend, sibling, whatever, I couldn't ever ask for a better other parent.
Yeah.
To have to go through this with, because I know that like if your kid causes shit with my kid, I'm gonna come to you and be like, oh my God, we need to have some coffee.
What's
Let's have
going
a conversation.
on? Yeah.
Because like I'm not gonna be coming to you and banging on your door and being like, your fucking kid.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have to worry about that with you at all.
Yeah. I'm gonna be like, Mandee,
what the
did you hear
on?
what Maverick did?
Yeah.
What him and Maverick? Oh my God.
And at least you and I know how we parent our kids. And so if something came up, you wouldn't immediately be like, well, that parent's not taking care of their kid.
Exactly.
It would be more like, hey, is something going on with so-and-so? Because this is what I'm hearing from my side of things. It wouldn't be just an immediate like, you don't know how to parent your kid.
Exactly. And like I'm not ever gonna judge you on like if Maverick makes a bad decision or if Quincy makes a bad decision or insert other children's names here.
Right.
Because I know you and I know that like if they make a bad decision, it is not a reflection of your parenting.
Right.
And
unless all of a sudden I start being a real shitty mom.
I was gonna say God forbid something like that happens, but I feel like you and I would be able to talk about that and you'd be like, wow, I feel like I'm gonna be a shitty mom. And I'm like, yeah, you're kind of being a shitty mom.
Yeah, I feel like we definitely have a close enough relationship that we could call each other out for like, hey, I realized you're kind of letting your kid just literally do whatever they want. Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing too, kind of branching off of that, is if our kid makes a bad choice or not even necessarily a bad choice, but maybe a questionable one. Like let's say one of our teenagers decides to do the thing and they tell their best friend. That ends up being one of our kids.
Right.
What if that best friend is like coming to mom being like, okay, so hypothetically speaking,
if I heard that so-and-so.
If I heard that a friend of mine, let's call her Susie, and we're like, oh God.
Okay.
I know this isn't Susie, but okay. Susie decided to do the thing. What should I tell her when it comes to talking to her mom? We can be like, do we all need to sit down and have a conversation like together? Because I know who this mom is.
Right.
And I wonder too, if that's going to end up being you and I get together and have a conversation trying to figure out how to go about that, because there could be a very real chance that you find out something before I do as the mom, or and vice versa. Yeah. Because I've heard of situations like that happening, even like there have been, I'm actually pretty sure one of my closest friends, my mom was the first one to find out that she had had sex.
Oh, interesting.
Because she came and talked to me and I was like, well, I'm like, I haven't done it yet.
Right.
Do you want to talk to somebody who has? Like, I'm sure my mom would talk to you, and my mom was willing to talk to her. Yeah. Because she didn't feel comfortable talking to her mom. Right. And she did. And I think my mom gave her advice on like how to talk to her mom about it. Right. Yeah. Which was awesome. Yeah. My mom probably, if she's listening to this, knows who I'm talking about. Yeah. I do wonder what that's going to look like. And then if we're going to see, with our kids being really close in age, if we're going to see the banding together and being like, okay, well, you decided to do this, when I went through this is how mom responded, and not enough time had passed really, because like 2 to 4 years really isn't that long. Right. Odds are I'm not going to change so much as a parent that things are going to drastically change between when one kid makes a choice and then another kid makes the same choice. Right. Yeah. Unless you learn something that's slightly like, maybe I should have went about it like this. Yeah. But overall, it should generally be the same. Odds are it's not going to go downhill. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully not. Yeah. Yeah. No, I hope that we all stay close together too, in the same general area, so that they can continue to grow up and have, they can look at your kids as an extra sibling and vice versa. So. I hope so too. Yeah. When it comes to, and I mean, you might not be able to speak on this like a ton, just like I can't speak on it a ton, but like when it comes to Michael, was he ever really close with his siblings?
He was kind of close with them, from what I understand. He was kind of close with them when they were younger, but he's gotten closer as they've gotten older.
Gotcha. So he had like that same gap of being like, ooh, this is awkward.
Yeah. I remember he was telling me like he was really excited to have a sister, if I remember right, when he was younger. And then because they lived in separate households, so it wasn't like he got to see them all the time.
That makes sense.
But now that they're older, they communicate, they text, they call, we see them, they come over and stuff. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Thomas is the only one in this group, in the group of us four, who doesn't talk to a majority of his family.
Yeah.
And so his next closest sibling is actually, I want to say, just about a year-ish apart from him.
Okay.
But that was on his dad's side, and he didn't live with his dad. He lived with his mom. And I think at this point, his dad really wasn't a big part of his life. So he didn't meet this sister until I think he was a little bit older. And he had a couple other sisters on his dad's side before he ever had a sibling on his mom's side.
Okay.
And so on his mom's side, the one that he lived with, his next closest sibling was, I think, 6 years, which is a slightly larger gap than me and my sibling.
Yeah.
And so, and he's not close with her. He's actually close with the sister that came after that one 2 years later.
I have a brother that I've only met once. And I think he's...
Wait, I didn't know that.
Really?
I didn't know you had an... I thought it was just...
Yeah. On my biological dad, he has a son.
Oh.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
He's...
Ever.
I don't remember how old he is, but he's... I want to say like 4 years younger than me.
Oh, okay. So technically
Or
is
5
your
years,
next
something
closer
like that.
sibling.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've only met him once. And yeah, it's weird having a sibling that you don't know, but at the same time, like I've always never known him, so it's not that weird to me.
Okay.
Like some people are like, wait, you have another brother? What's he like? And I'm like, don't know.
I don't know if I have any other siblings on my dad's side. I don't think so. If I do, it would have been a relatively recent adoption.
Oh, okay.
Because his wife is infertile.
Oh, okay.
And also in her 40s now, which makes it less likely anyways.
Right.
But I don't know, and nor do I think I ever would know.
Right.
And so it is kind of weird knowing that I don't know.
It is. It's weird. It's weird and it's not weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to talk about. But I'm glad that my kids don't have to go through that. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, my sibling has a brother, a stepsister, and I think like one other sibling he doesn't talk to.
Oh.
And so, and I am friends with, at least as far as Facebook goes, the brother and the stepsister.
Okay.
And so I know them. And growing up, they were I kind of had like a cousin-ish relationship with them. I never had a sibling relationship when they weren't my siblings.
Right.
Which is weird. It's weird for your sibling to not, your sibling's sibling to not be also your sibling.
Yeah, that is weird.
Which was really weird growing up in like, I think like a couple times during school, they'd be like, so what'd you do over the weekend? And we would like, have those conversations. And I was saying that I would go to like my sibling's dad's house or whatever. But like, yeah, I was riding, my siblings' sisters' horses. And they're like, so your sister's horses? No, not my sister, my sibling's sister.
Yeah.
And it was always such a confusing thing.
It is confusing.
Yeah.
Because if they're not still together, then they wouldn't be your sister. Like, had your sibling's dad and your mom stayed together, well, yeah.
Well, then the brother, my sibling's brother still wouldn't be my brother because he's older than me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like a whole bunch of...
Yeah, it's confusing.
It's very... Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so confusing. And I'm really glad that my kids don't have to go through that.
Same.
I'm glad that they're never going to have to do the whole, like, every other Christmas I'm with mom thing. Fingers crossed anyways.
Right.
I'm glad that they're never going to have to, have the whole stepmom, stepdad thing. Granted, there's nothing inherently wrong with that.
No. A lot of people make that work.
Yeah. But
we grew up in that.
Literally. Didn't work out for me, but worked out for you.
Yeah.
And hey, what worked out for you worked out for me. So
There you go. Exactly.
I gained you because of it.
Exactly.
Granted, you would have still been in my life regardless, but still.
Yes. That's funny to think about too.
It really is that even if your parents didn't get together, you and I still would have been close because our moms were friends. If you guys forget,
our moms were friends
before we became cousins. So
yeah. That's crazy.
And I hope that our kids together will get to have the relationship that you and I have.
Yeah, me too.
The cousins, but more like sisters type thing. And obviously with whatever mix of that there is. Yeah. The other thing with full siblings that I find interesting that I'm going to enjoy looking at, and I already sort of see it, is because they're full siblings, the difference in genetics.
Oh, right.
Because with me being the only product, you and Michael and Thomas all being the only product of our parents specifically, there's not, like, we can't look at our other siblings and be like, oh, that's interesting that you got these features and I didn't.
From
because,
dad or mom or,
it doesn't, like, I can look at my sibling and be like, yeah, you look like our mom, and also I can see your dad.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not going to be able to see the differences in the way that I look, whereas in my children, especially my oldest two, they look wildly different.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be interesting growing up to see how that dynamic how that aspect changes the dynamic of things.
I agree. Except I think my kids kind of look exactly like each other.
I was going to say your kids look the same. But Anna and Damon look nothing alike.
As Maverick gets older, he does look a lot more like his dad. He has my nose, so that really throws everything off. It just kind of looks like me. But he is starting to look more and more like his dad. Whereas Quincy literally looks like my face.
Yeah.
It's weird. Literally me out a lot. She still looks like her dad, too, in some respects. And when she was first born, I was like, holy moly, that looks like Michael. But she's my daughter.
Yes, she looks just like you. It's interesting. Yeah. I see Michael, but I feel like he just almost very slightly dampens your features, but those are still your features on her face.
It's like you see a glimmer of her dad, but it's me.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah. Overall, I think it's just going to be really interesting to see how their relationship plays out differently than how our relationship as having half siblings and step siblings.
And the big gap between us.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's going to be probably the biggest factor. I don't think them being full versus half siblings is going to be drastic. The biggest difference for that is just going to be the fact that there isn't a separate parent.
Right.
In the picture. But in terms of all of us living together, I don't think that's going to be like a big weird thing. But I think that for us, seeing the age gap is going to be the biggest.
Yeah.
And the differences that play therein, and even the dynamic of like their genders and stuff too. Because I had girl, boy, girl, and so far you've had boy, girl. So it'll be interesting to see if I have another one. Am I going to have a boy?
Right.
And then is it just going to be swapping back and forth each time for me?
Yeah. And that's the other thing, is I only experienced sister with two brothers in that dynamic, and then I watched my brothers as they were young growing up, and so I felt very like more on the side of having a boy at first, because I watched two little boys grow up when I was younger, and so Maverick came very easy to me. Having a girl is kind of like, what?
Thomas is kind of the same way. So he has mostly sisters. He has a very much younger brother, who, when I met Thomas, he was 18. This brother was like 6.
Oh, okay.
Big age gap.
So like 12 years.
Yeah. That's a big age gap. Thomas was an adult. This kid was in like kindergarten.
I think that's like Brady and I. We're closer to
that.
I think we're like a 10, 11 years. But yeah.
Yeah, so you even know that a little bit too. But so, and he's one of 8 genetic, because he has like 2 that he considers siblings. But 8 genetic siblings. And the only boys are first and last.
Okay, yeah.
Everybody, or actually, Louis might have been younger than 6, because I think the next older sibling was 6, so I don't know.
Okay.
But it's the first and last were boys. And so big age gap there.
Yeah.
And everybody else is a girl. He has, that would be what? 7 sisters, I think. No, 6 sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, he only grew up mostly with 2, and then he had 2 foster sisters.
Okay.
Growing up. They were technically his cousins. And so he only had the girls, just like you only had the boys.
Right.
And so when we had our first, same thing. He wanted the girl because that's what he understood.
Yeah.
I wanted the girl because I wanted a daughter.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's gonna be, it's weird. It really is.
Oh, and that's the other thing I just thought of.
What?
Thomas is the oldest of all the kids.
Aren't we all?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because we all have oldest child syndrome.
Yes, we do.
Where I wonder how that will be parenting the middle child, the youngest child, how those differences will be. Because we're going to see ourselves most in our first, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
We'll relate to them the most, maybe.
We might also be uniquely qualified in the sense of we remember what it was like for our parents to parent us, and then we saw the difference.
True.
In how our parents parented the younger ones, and we might then be uniquely qualified to be like, okay, I'm not going to do that.
True. I could see that.
Because I see a really big difference in like how my mom parents my sibling versus how she parented me.
Yeah.
I'm sure you see a difference in how your mom parented you versus your brothers, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And being able to recognize when you're treating your kid different, or like if your oldest comes up to you and you're like, okay, how come when I did this, you reacted this way, and now such and such is doing this and you're not, and you'll be able to be like, ooh,
good catch.
you're right. I remember being in your shoes,
Yeah.
and we might take a step back and not feel that way.
That's true.
Because my mom is the middle child.
Mm-hmm. My mom's the middle child.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad's the oldest. Stepdad, but still dad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
he is. Because he's my mom's older brother.
I was going to say, because Aaron's the youngest, right?
Yes,
okay.
he is. I was just thinking, I was looking up because I was thinking, I was like, that's kind of interesting because you and I both get that experience of, I know what the middle child of that family parents like. You know what the oldest child of that family parents like, which is not something most people get to see or talk about, because I don't think a lot of cousins talk about that dynamic.
That's true. And so we both had middle child parents. Moms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Whereas we are now not that.
Yeah.
And I feel like
it's cool to think about.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it'll be interesting too when our parents become, or our children become parents.
Yeah.
And seeing how each of them parent differently. And it's a lot of how they parent is also going to be based off of how we parent them.
Right.
Because that stuff tends to follow.
Keep going down generational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously, there's going to be changes, but it'll be interesting to see the differences in that and how they relate to each other.
Yeah. It'll just be cool watching them all grow up. I'm excited for it. It's such a bittersweet thing, though.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
Yeah.
But I'm excited too.
Yeah.
I think that wraps up.
I think so.
This week's episode.
Yeah.
This was a fun one to talk about. It really was.
It was interesting. Different kind of topic.
Mm-hmm. But so we will see you next week in whatever topic we have.
Yes.
If you're interested,
check out Kate.
It's a fun one. I enjoyed writing it. Link will be in the bio. Make sure you check out our merch. I'm wearing merch today. Thomas picked this shirt out.
Oh, I am wearing black. Sorry.
And follow us on our social medias. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share this with a friend.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.